Last evening we have seen that there is one consciousness in its static aspect, supportive poise. It is called in the Tantras Shiva. The same consciousness in its dynamic aspect, consciousness as force, is called Shakti. Both are the same reality. This consciousness, this conscious force, what is called Shakti, has three poises. One, transcendent, far above this world or any number of worlds that constitute this universe. The same Shakti, power, is spread out in the universe. It is the universal force or Shakti. The very same Shakti individualizes itself in each form, not only in man, but in every unit of creation. There is this consciousness in its static aspect, in its dynamic aspect. The miracle of the eternal is repeated in every creature, in every form. We have seen that this universal Shakti constitutes itself into a number of worlds, all of which together constitute the cosmos. In the macrocosm, there is not only this physical world, but there is the life world, there is the mind world, there is the world of light, there is the world of bliss, there is the world of consciousness, there is a world of sheer existence. The same scheme is repeated in the individual. In each one of us, all these 7 worlds, planes, are inherent in principle. That is why they say the microcosm is the macrocosm on a miniature scale. And this power, the conscious power, is there in man, embedded. Only that much part of it as is necessary for day-to-day activities is drawn out by nature, and we function on that fraction of spiritual consciousness, spiritual energy, as we are habituated to. It is because that we thus live in a fragmentary way, drawing only on a fraction of the resources that are available to us, that our life is so limited, so bounded, subject to pain, suffering, and what not. Imagine, each one of us has a fraction of consciousness, of individualized energy, and each one is 24 hours face to face with the impacts of the universal life energies, universal mental energies. All the time they come, the impacts of life. And the little individual energy shrinks. It can't meet the universal impact in a full embrace. If I could do that, then life would be a perpetual joy, perpetual delight. On the other hand, because of my self-imposed limitation, I guard myself. I say this is foreign, this is other, and this is I. And I shrink. A contact from which I shrink is painful. A contact that helps me, that adds something to my sum total, I welcome as a pleasant contact. But the whole situation is artificial. Man has to learn to tap the untapped resources, the untapped potential in himself, and that is endless. Sri Aurobindo says that man lives hardly 1/10 of his being. He is like a tip of an iceberg. All the rest is concealed. It is part of culture, civilization, education, and particularly of spiritual techniques to become more and more conscious, awaken and activize the hidden potential in man, so that man becomes aware of larger tracts of his own being, to which he is today a stranger. He is constantly surprised by thoughts, by feelings, by proclivities which are totally new. From where do they come? Do they come from outside, or do they come from inside himself? This requires a certain self-scrutiny, self-observation, and that is the first step of any type of yoga. In the Kundalini Yoga, with which we are primarily concerned, the first basic postulate is that the spiritual energy, the spiritual consciousness as energy is lying dormant, asleep in the human body. As I said, only a fraction of it is active and carries on our activities. It is this basic energy, spiritual in character, that formulates itself in the mind as mental energies, in the emotional being as emotional energies, in the life dynamism as pranic or life energies, and in the physical body as material energies. All energies are essentially one. They take on different characters according to the function they perform. What applies to energies applies much more to consciousness, because energy is consciousness as force. It is a mistake to think that mind is consciousness. Mind, organized around the brain, is an instrument, a self-formulation of consciousness. Just as the heart is the same consciousness, differently organized with different vibrations, so too the life energy is a specialized formulation of consciousness, and the body too has a consciousness of its own. It is not that the body derives whatever element of consciousness it has from the mind. It is a mistake to think that the mind directs the body. Maybe in the segmented life that we lead, but the body has a character, a consciousness of its own, and it is the function of Hatha Yoga to awaken this consciousness in the physical body by manipulation of limbs, adoption of postures, regulation of movements. The whole body is energized. Each limb is made to feel its separate, its own existence, and by a system of coordination, the consciousness in the body is aroused. And when the body is self-conscious, it does things spontaneously which the mind at present labors to do. In the presence of a food that is harmful, the body will instantly react even before touching the food. In a place where there is likely to be an accident, the body will shrink even before it goes into that situation. What the mind does by ratiocination, the body does spontaneously. That is why the mother says, you never truly understand anything till the body understands. The body is looked upon as something sacred, as the foundation, as the pedestal of whatever spiritual edifice you are going to erect. And in this body, there is the spinal column. The spinal column is the main axis connecting matter with the spirit, metaphorically called earth and heaven. And along the spinal column, there are certain centers of consciousness, centers where consciousness and its energy is centralized. Each centralization is based on a particular psychological principle. And these vortices, concentrations of consciousness, are normally closed in man. Only the surface part is active. And there are, along this column, 6 centers of this consciousness. At the bottom of the spinal column is the physical center where this consciousness force, this energy, lies asleep, dormant. It is described as self-winding. Those who have the vision have seen that it winds itself 3.5 times, and it lies asleep, picturing the image of a serpent at the bottom of the spine. There is an opening in that spine. It closes the door and it is there. Now, that power is called the Kundalini Shakti. It will interest you to know that the cosmic power spreading all over the universe, conducting the activities of the universe, is called the Mahakundali, the great Kundali. The same in the individual scheme is called Kundalini. There it is the great Kundalini, here it is simple Kundalini. Now this Kundalini and the various centers of consciousness that I mentioned are not to be found in the physical body. Many commit the mistake of trying to locate them in the physical body, in the ganglionic centers, certain nerve centers and so on. Actually, they are situated in what I would call the subtle physical body. For the physical body that you see is not the only body that we have. Behind, or if this is the physical body, around it is the subtle physical body, where the principle of the constitution of that body is indeed matter, but very subtle matter, not the rigid, hard, fragmented matter of which our body is constituted. There is a subtler body, more free. The theosophists call it the etheric body. And this body, around the physical body, has no limits. It spreads itself. And any sickness, any contact coming to the physical body has first to pass through this subtle physical or the ethereal body. And unless, if that body is strong in vibrations, it can throw off that illness. How to keep that body strong, that protective envelope strong? It is kept strong, vibrant, by bright movements, always energy, full of energy, activity, bright thoughts, looking always and feeling the bright side of things. A person who is prone to depression, prone always to be weak and indulge in his weakness, he creates kind of holes in that protective envelope, and any outside attack passes through the walls and attacks the physical body. So it is in our hands to strengthen our protective envelope, the subtle physical body, by cultivating a positive approach, bright attitude, and being always cheerful. Now these centers are situated, as I said, in that subtle physical body. Behind the subtle physical body is what is called the vital body, the body constituted of life force, the pranic body, or the prana, the life force, still larger. Behind that is the mental body, constituted of the mental stuff. And behind the mental body, there is the causal body, very thin, very subtle. And behind the causal body is the bliss body, the real body of the self, the soul. Now, each one of us has these 5 bodies, what are called significantly 5 sheaths. The physical is the outermost. Now these subtle physical centers have their areas of influence, corresponding areas of impact in the physical body. That is how we relate the physical body to the corresponding centers in the subtle physical body. Each center of consciousness has its operation in a particular area of the body, where the configuration of the nerve conduits, not physical nerves, but nerve channels through which the life energy flows, they are so convoluted that they appear like wheels. So they call them chakras. Chakra is a wheel. The nerve channels organize themselves in such a way that they look like wheels. They are also called lotuses. There are no actual lotuses or figures of lotuses. A lotus in the Indian symbolism is something opening, consciousness opening to the touch of a ray from truth, from the light. It blossoms. And each center, each chakra is called as a lotus. But significantly, each lotus is pictured as hanging with its face downwards. Now, this Kundalini Shakti, that dormant power, which is at the base of the spine, closing with its mouth, the opening of the spinal column, there is a channel, is to be awakened. That is the first aim of this yoga, Kundalini Yoga. And how do we do it? It is there, and it has to be awakened, moved, set into operation. And for this, there are 3 essentials. The first is a guru. Now, a guru is a teacher who already has had the realization of the truth which you seek from him. Not only he has the experience, the realization, but he has also the capacity to transmit that realization to you. There is a subtle interchange subtle communication of the dynamics of his realization to one who seeks it from him. Not all people who realize have got that capacity. They live in themselves, and whatever benefit accrues to others, it is incidental. But there are some who have the capacity to transmit their spiritual dynamism to others. And such a teacher is God-made, not man-made. Anyone who has the knowledge, theoretical knowledge, a little bit of experience, can't call himself a guru. A guru is appointed by God. He is born with those capacities, full of humility, humble, always identified with the good of those who come to him. In his presence, you feel lifted up. You don't feel small in the presence of his greatness, but you share in his greatness and you are elevated. You feel 10 times bigger than what you are. Sri Aurobindo describes such a guru as a man helping his brothers, a child leading children, a light kindling other lights, an awakened power and presence of God calling other powers back to God. Such a teacher, and in our context, he must be one who has himself awakened and realized the full truth of the Kundalini, and he is in a position not only to awaken your Kundalini, but to help you to direct it. Let us assume that we have found such a guru. The next step is he gives a mantra. I have described at length last evening what is a mantra. It may be a single syllable, it may be a combination of syllables or words. Which mantra he is going to give you, he decides after keeping you in certain observation for some time. One mantra will not do for everybody. The same mantra which does good to one may do harm to another. One has to have a friendly mantra. Each one is in a different state of evolutionary development, and the urge that he needs, the prod that he needs is different from what another person may need. So the teacher, the ideal teacher, keeps the seeker in his own house, in his company for some time, and observes and watches. What's the demand of his soul? What's the path that the soul is choosing? And accordingly, he selects a particular mantra and communicates that mantra to him. In communicating the mantra, his spiritual power, his spiritual dynamism automatically enters into the being of the disciple and carries on the work of awakening, of directing the Kundalini. And third essential is practice. This is not a hobby or an idle pursuit for people. It should be the prime concern. Unless one feels the need of God, the need of the divine, like a fish out of water. It is not very advisable to change one's evocation. One must be sure of the call, that one has no more attraction, call to the things, the sense life, to things of the lower belt of life. And it is only when one has that intensity of aspiration, feeling for higher things, one is not satisfied with the present limited life, that one devotes attention, concentration, and does ascesis, concentration of energies for a particular object. So one sits each day for a while, a prescribed period, and repeats that mantra, concentrating his attention on the base of the spine, imagining for a while, to begin with, that the Shakti is there asleep, and calling it mentally to awaken. In doing this, he joins his breath. The breath that you breathe plays a very important part in this and allied yogas, because the breath is the prime operation of life energy, and that governs the state of our mind, the state of our emotions. And whenever you find irregular breathing, you can be certain that the mind is restless, agitated, not organized. You have to first observe your breath, equalize your breath, in breathing and out breathing, elongate the breath, acquire a certain control over the breathing operation. The mind comes automatically under control, the emotions get collected, and then join that act of breathing to the repetition of the mantra. The whole of yourself, your soul, you may call it, should join, should infuse itself in this operation. This has to go on till there are the first rumblings of this power which awakes. Much depends upon the help that one receives through the Guru, through the teacher in this matter. Second, how far you are evolutionarily ready to support the action of this dormant power. Let us assume that all goes well, and there is the first throb. Here at the base of the spine there is a throb. You feel something moving. Alongside, you feel a gathering heat. The first effect, tangible effect of the awakening of this power is heat. In the beginning it is very pleasant, warm, but as it gathers, it is like burning fire. One has to endure. That means the power is awakened, and there is a sense of movement when it tries to stir. At that moment, the normal balance that nature has struck between the body, the life energies, and the mind is disturbed. Till a new balance is struck consciously by you, This kind of agitation, this kind of restlessness consequent on the awakening of the Kundalini is inevitable. At that time, all the lower desires, greed for food and drink, greed for sex, the sexual excitement, all these increase tremendously because they are situated in that region, and an influx of energy, influx of consciousness whips them into activity. And that is the danger zone when most people who start well, they yield to the sexual desires. It is most important that one does not yield to sex desire at that time. Most of the books on the tantras, on the Kundalini, which are being peddled in the West, don't give this precaution. Young people who practice it, they suddenly feel their sexual appetite increased, the sexual capacity is increased, and they begin to respond, indulge. And they think this is a wonderful path. But they don't know that they are ruining themselves at that stage. Tantra does not call for elimination of sex for all time. But there are periods when there has to be a certain self-control and denial of indulgence. When sex becomes safe is, I shall indicate later, but at this stage, when the Kundalini or the power awakes and throws itself food, desire for food, desire for sex augment themselves. It is necessary at that time that one has to satisfy the physical appetite for food. Otherwise the body is eaten up. One has to have food number of times. It won't do to eat full stomach once or twice a day. Every few hours, the body will have to be given sustenance, nourishing sustenance, to withstand the operations and the activities of the Kundalini. And one draws it, one consciously prays to it. It is a divine power. It is not a biological power, not a physical power. It is something divine in character. One prays and draws it upwards. And the first center of consciousness, the first chakra, is below the navel. That governs the activities of lower desires, food, greed, and so on. As long as the power does not cross beyond it, one is in the belt of these pulls, lower pulls of nature. When you rise above it, when you draw it still above, you come to the next center, which is in the navel. It is called the navel center. I am not giving the Sanskrit names at the moment. It is a center in the navel region, commanding great impulses of courage, heroism, nobility, and most of the heroic exploits of man have emanated from there. It is the seat of what is called the higher vital region. And there, when the Kundalini touches, great wide movements, noble movements, they spring up. And one feels large. One feels capable of heroic deeds, Above, you pull up and you come to the center in the heart. That's the center of love. And when this power touches here, all inhibitions break down. There is no more mine and yours. There is an outflow of love, of generosity, of benevolence. One feels one with the whole universe. This is the center of love. Above that, when you bring up, there is the next center at the throat. It is the center of expression. People find enlarged capacities for expression, oratory, elocution, poetry, wonderful expression. Still above is the sixth center here, between the eyebrows, and that is the center of vision and will. Vision is you see beyond the physical vision. And will, whatever you will, you can achieve. The will acquires an extraordinary capacity and force to effectuate itself. And both vision and will join here. It is called the eyebrow center, what they call the third eye in the Tibetan system, is nothing else except this vision center. There is no such thing as another eye behind the skin. It is a subtle vision center that opens and you begin to see. And above that, this is the last center in the body. Above that, above the crown of the head, but above the head, is the superconscious center, where the divine consciousness, the self, the immutable self, is situated. And when this force, power, going from below meets there, there is a union between what is called the Shakti and Shiva. Symbolically put, between woman and man. This is the real union that the Tantras speak of. The woman, the Shakti that arises, and the Lord, the man, the Purusha, who is there. And as soon as they meet, there is a downpour of bliss, a tremendous bliss, illumination all over the system. In the beginning, this can last for hardly a minute or two. The body can't support this union, this charge of bliss, and the power comes back. Now, as it rises, each center, each lotus turns its head and looks upwards. When the power comes down, they all come back to the original position, and it goes and rests again at the basal center. This practice has to be repeated thousands of times. This calls for intensive practice, intensive application, observance of certain purity in life, physical and psychological purity, great attention, till this becomes normalized. That is, the power that goes stays there for a considerable period of time, and at that time you are in a totally different state of consciousness. Everything appears different. And once this ascent, it is natural, normal to have sex, but not till then. Sex is ruinous till the Kundalini ascent and descent are naturalized. After that it is a part of life. This is a fact to be kept in mind. Now, what exactly happens when the Kundalini power is thus awakened, dynamized and raised from step to step, has been beautifully described by Sri Aurobindo in his epic Savitri, which I shall take up in the afternoon when we meet at 3:30. I have given you as much information, as much description as can be verbally done. These are essentially matters of practice and experience. But what I have been told will give you an idea, a picture of what takes place. There is a controversy whether when the power is awakened, it goes up, the rest of the body becomes cold. Whether the entire power goes up or what happens. The fact is, that much of the power which is necessary to keep the body alive remains. But it is not overtly active. That is why the body feels cold. And the body recovers its warmth after the power comes down. Now this awakening of the dormant power, activizing it in life, brings about naturally a release from the bounds of nature, desire nature, and brings about a change in the consciousness, so that you live in a totally different consciousness than normal. You wield a greater control and a greater power over yourself, your environment and nature. That is the object and the process of Kundalini Yoga. Now, if you have questions, you are welcome to ask.
You said that the first thing you need is a guru.
Yeah.
How did Kundalini begin? Who was the first guru?
How did
the practice of Kundalini begin before there was a first guru?
How did the practice of Kundalini begin when there was no guru? The answer is, like many things in nature, Kundalini also was a secret not known to man. It was somebody who developed himself, who developed the vision and the experience that goes with the guru. He discovers, as a scientist discovers, the secret of the atom. A spiritual scientist discovers in the course of his labors the secret of Kundalini lying in the human body and how to activate it. He teaches somebody, and there a tradition starts. Yeah.
And Kundalini could be awakened without a guru, right? Just with this feeling of wanting
Kundalini can be awakened without a guru. Is that right? There are many cases where Kundalini has been awakened by following certain practices written in books by individuals without the aid of a guru. There are also cases where even without the intention of the person, it has suddenly shot up and created all kinds of difficulties. We have known of people who are going by buses and trams. Suddenly he feels a sudden movement and he is unable to do anything there. He can't walk, he can't sit, and there is excitement, and he feels himself a prisoner, a helpless prisoner. We know of a person in our ashram young boy, who was doing pole vaulting. So just at that time when he was doing the vaulting, it awakened, because that physical movement stimulated it. So there are many involuntary awakenings, as also willed awakenings. But most of the involuntary awakenings die down after some time. And persons who awaken them with a will, they find themselves in hot waters after some time, when they can't regulate it. It just shoots up at any awkward time. There is pain, there is burning, you don't know which way. This is to be observed. I spoke of the central spinal column. Within that, at the center, is the, what you may call, the nerve channel. Sushumna it is called. But on either side, there are two other channels. One is called the sun channel, S-U-N, and the third one is called the moon channel. Now many times it happens that when there is an involuntary awakening or an ignorant awakening, instead of going through the center, it may go through the sun channel, and there is very excruciating burning, and people neither can live nor can die. Similarly, if one is lucky, it may come through the moon channel and you have pleasant bliss. But the point is, it should be directed through neither, but through the center. Now this requires careful regulation. The Guru knows, he can know from which channel it has come, and he can direct it to the right channel if it has taken a wrong channel. So it is unsafe. Kundalini without a Guru is not impossible, but it is unsafe, risky. I have had occasions to carry a number of letters from people from different parts of the world, complaining that the Kundalini has awakened in them, either due to ignorant practice, half knowledge, or involuntarily, and it is interfering with their daily lives and they are unable to do anything, and asking me to approach my Guru to help them. And it has always happened, the moment she was informed, she would send some spiritual help and that normalcy would be restored. It is possible, but it is risky.
What is the effect of having this experience afterwards? Does it make you a wiser person in some way, or what
It is a very good leading question. What is the effect of the awakening and activizing of Kundalini? You have sound physical health, control over your body, more enlightened mind, an enlarged awareness, and a growing identity with the divine consciousness. But this is not liberation. It creates helpful conditions for you to work out your spiritual destiny on that basis. Kundalini Yoga does not give liberation, but it creates conditions in which liberation is easier. After having said so much, I should observe that in modern conditions of life, Kundalini Yoga is not practicable. Only a recluse can spare so much time and be lucky in getting spiritual guidance. What the Kundalini Yoga seeks to achieve can be achieved today with less labor, less risk, by other psychological techniques that are being developed. Opening of the centers of consciousness, activizing the dormant energies, all these are possible by more holistic yogas that are being developed in the world. In Kundalini, you follow a set process. But man's nature can never be tied down to such systems. It always has a certain freedom of development. And the mechanical process of awakening the centers does not work well in all cases.
Will you be discussing these other processes or other ways of doing it?
Yes. After this, speaking of the effect of the awakening with the Kundalini in life, from Sri Aurobindo's epic in the afternoon, I will throw some sidelights on other processes that can replace the Kundalini Yoga. Maybe in the evening.
Are you saying that like the path of Kundalini Yoga almost demands that a person become kind of a recluse in order to devote the time and the energy to it? But the other paths that are more integrated and holistic, you can like live more in the world and like not have to devote that much time or solitude or whatever to that. Is that kind of what you're saying?
The question is, in saying that Kundalini Yoga is more fitted for a recluse, do you mean to say that there are other disciplines, more integrative, holistic, in which a person can continue to function in the world normally, side by side with developing this inner side of himself? Perfectly so. Perfectly so. Today, yoga is not a call away from life. A yoga like Kundalini Yoga requires hours and hours of practice. Sparing yourself from, guarding yourself from outer contacts during certain periods. You have to spend hours and hours practicing this breathing, concentration, repetition of the japa. And that, I suppose, very few can do it. And there is the question of finding the right guru. Many gurus, they disclaim their responsibility when things become difficult, and they just shake off saying, you have not followed my directions. Many have complained in books. Gopi Krishna, one of the recent adherents of the Kundalini, who has started number of research institutes both in India, America, Switzerland, to find the effect on consciousness and similar themes. He complains that when he was being consumed by that fire, because the Kundalini came up through the wrong channel, involuntarily, he never wanted it, and his body became so lean. Nobody could help him, nobody could guide him. He wired to all kinds of teachers, but none would come in that position. So he has started why this happens. How can we control the movement of Kundalini? What is the effect it has on human evolution? To find out these things, he has promoted certain research activities. Gopi Krishna is the name. But even he who believes that all the problems of humanity will be solved by awakening the Kundalini in everybody, even he sounds notes of warning. He simply could not do anything, and one day, after number of months and months of excruciating suffering, he wanted to commit suicide the next day. He had taken leave of his wife, children, without telling them that much, but mentally he had taken leave and he wanted to commit suicide. It was then that the grace of God acted. He suddenly remembered that in some book somewhere it was mentioned that if the Kundalini comes through the sun channel, you have burning. If it comes through the moon channel, you have bliss. So he said, he concentrated, imagined, and drew the breath through the other channel, and immediately he had the feeling of coolness, peace, and then after he corrected himself, and the rest is a long story.
Is there any problem that goes up the moon channel about getting it straightened out? Did you see someone about that also?
That's the main problem. To straighten out things when things go wrong.
You're blissful, you don't know that anything is straightened out.
But the bliss comes only at the ultimate stage. Till you reach the bliss stage, there are a lot of painful stages. And if things go out of control, if your nervous mechanism is unable to bear that impact, you become a wreck. So one has to be a very sound physique, one has to have a sound physique, tremendous life energy, and a mental discrimination with the aid of an adept, of one who already has that experience and is in a position to direct it. Bliss, yes, but there it stops. Bliss by itself doesn't give liberation, doesn't give enlightenment. In the traditional yoga of Patanjali, the 8-limbed yoga, which I believe some of you at least must be knowing, there is sounds of warning that once you go into trance, there is this sudden downpour of bliss. And that's the last temptation for man, to stay there, enjoying that bliss, forgetting the truth above, forgetting the truth beyond, become a prisoner of delight. So it can be a decoy if you stop there. It is an experience, but it must be taken as a step to something beyond.
Is it a necessary step to go to deliverance, or can you dispense with it the way mystics have, for example?
Yes, you can dispense with it. You can dispense with it. Actually, if you ask me, peace is more important than bliss. For spiritual growth, spiritual liberation, an unbroken peace, an immutable peace is more fundamental than the experience of bliss. Bliss can be interrupted, but peace can't be. Peace gives you a control over your life, yourself. Bliss has a way of making you anarchic, unorganized. Intoxicated. Man loses control over himself unless he has acquired a deep inner base. In his Savitri, Sri Aurobindo's epic, he describes how this kind of state, a heart of peace in the hands of joy. The joy, governing it, there must be peace. I think we should stop now, 11:30. I was told 1.5 hours is the time. Somebody has a question? There are still 5 minutes. Yes? There, that lady green. Obviously, for such persons, there are other yogas that are relevant, and by practicing the Hatha Yoga and the Raja Yoga, it is possible to remedy the situation to a great extent. One starts in this area and reaches the pranic energy, the life energy, to the affected parts. One opens in the mind to peace, and that peace is reached to the body, opening possibilities for nature to work. In such cases, nature has to be helped to restore the normal conditions. And certain concentrations in Hatha Yoga and Raja Yoga help to some extent. But by yoga, a condition of mind, a psychological state can be achieved by which one is no longer concerned with one's physical handicaps. One just doesn't mind it. He gets over it. Because the mind gets over the attachment to the body. We have in our Auroville planetary city in the making a project of the ashram. A classic case, a lady, I think, I am not sure whether she is European or American. She was working, building something, a high tower, and she fell down from the top. And the whole thing below this was paralyzed. But she fainted. She was shifted to the hospital, and after a lot of massage, treatment, injections, she could recover her consciousness. But then friends from the United States offered help. They said, you bring her here and we will have her treated. But she said, no, that's the center of my yoga and I want to stay here. And by sheer concentration, meditation, surrendering herself to the divine consciousness, the mind constantly dwelling positively, she has now come to a state where if she is touched on the feet, she knows that somebody has touched. After 3 to 4 years. That shows that by these methods one can tackle such extreme cases even. The doctors had no hope that she would ever recover movement. But it is showing signs that it is getting round. Maybe a few years more, she has the will, she always smiles and is cheerful.